The lottery was a disaster for New Orleans, but I have 3 trades that make the Pelicans exciting, relevant, and fun. It's the Wednesday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Wednesday. We are still reeling after the Pelicans having just some unfortunate lottery luck on Monday night here. We did the live show breaking it all down. So let's move on from that, at least really quickly here, and let's make the Pelicans exciting, relevant, fun, all of those great things. I'm going to present 3 trades for you, or variations of a trade, that make the Pelicans those things that kind of just add some juice to next season after what feels like a really big letdown and a lack of excitement going into next season and the off season. So we're going to cover it all in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And if you're an everydayer, I appreciate you. Shout out to you and let me know in the comments down below. So let's look at these 3 trades. And look, there are littler, smaller, lesser trades that we'll get into this offseason. I have a couple of in mind, but I think these are the type of exciting moves that put the Pelicans on a different direction here. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. This is not, okay, we upgraded our 5th starter, so what kind of thing. This is, let's do something big. Let's create some excitement with the fan base. These are the trades that we're looking at today. And it starts with Dylan Harper and the San Antonio Spurs and going and getting the 2nd pick. Look, I'm very high on Dylan Harper. I think when you look at a big, strong, physical lead guard like him, that's the type of player that really succeeds in the playoffs. You kind of see it with Anthony Edwards. I want someone like that on the team, especially if you compare him alongside Zion Williamson. That type of guard, big man combo is going to have me in the building, even if I wasn't going to already be there, every game next season. So here's the trade. This is not going to be cheap, and there's kind of an asterisk to this too, really. So the trade is Harrison Barnes, Keldon Johnson, the 2nd pick for CJ McCollum, the 7th pick, Jordan Hawkins, and it's going to need to be a 1st-round pick next year. I would like it to ideally be the Indiana Pacers 1st-round pick next year that the Pelicans own rather than their own or the Bucks, and that pick's a little confusing. But you could maybe convince me if you think Dylan Harper is that guy. So that's the trade here. You know, I don't know if San Antonio is interested in this, truthfully, and they definitely aren't going to do this if they want Giannis from the Milwaukee Bucks. But when you look at their team, you've got to get into the salary cap situation with them a little bit of why this makes more sense for them. Like, for the Pelicans' perspective, right, it's pretty obvious. Why do the Spurs do this? I'm giving you realistic deals here, in my opinion. When you look at the Spurs, you know, you have Victor Wembanyama being extension eligible this offseason, next offseason, I forget which, for a 30% max. Once you give that to him, you're going to give De'Aaron Fox a 30% max. You're looking at 2 guys, 60% of your salary cap. Can you really go and trade for Giannis knowing he's due for a contract extension and a max soon too, which is also 30%, and you have 90% of your salary cap committed to those 3 guys? One of them will be over 33, 34 in Giannis at that point in time. I don't know if that's the right kind of move, because you're going to see with the Boston Celtics, especially after this Jason Tatum injury, you get a window for a couple years, then you're in that second apron, you're in the luxury tax, you have to tear it down. Is that too early to really go all in for the San Antonio Spurs? And I think the answer is yes. And when you look at them with the 2nd overall pick, does Dylan Harper make much sense? You have De'Aaron Fox, who's going to be your lead guard next season. Stephon Castle was the rookie of the year and looked great. You have Chris Paul there too. Do you really need to add like another point guard into that mix? Or is that going to stifle someone like Dylan Harper's development? I think it very much might. That doesn't seem like a smart use of the second overall pick. When you look at the San Antonio Spurs, they need shooting. They were 20th in 3-point percentage next season. And going back to the money stuff we talked about, where you're going to have two guys counting for 60% of your salary cap in just a minute, CJ McCollum's a big expiring deal, leaving wide open future flexibility, and you're getting other assets to wait for that all-in move with maybe a player that better fits their timeline slightly. You need a guard that can shoot there. Devin Vassell is a 2-guard / wing, but you kind of still probably want him at the 3. So if you do this deal and you include a Pacers pick next year, or even the Pelicans' own pick next year, which is the better of the most preferred of the Pelicans and Bucks pick, they kind of did a pick swap with 2 separate picks is what it was, and it's kind of super weird. It's an interesting idea, I think, right? Giving up a Bucks pick next year, especially if they do end up trading Giannis to, another team, feels like a lot. And the Pelicans then, if they're bad next year behind Zion Williamson and Dylan Harper, don't have their own first-round pick. And if you go through a season like this and you just don't have your pick at all, that feels really rough. But if you really believe in Dylan Harper, and I do, maybe this is the move to make. I think a lesser extent of this trade, if you're kind of going for, we're building around Zion's timeline, let's add a guard or someone we think can really fit that, is a trade with Charlotte for 4. This is a smaller version of this. You're not getting Dylan Harper, but you're getting one of those 3-4 guys. You're at that point guaranteed Ace Bailey or VJ Edgecombe, both of whom I think are going to be good NBA players, though I actually think the measurables on Ace Bailey came back kind of disappointing, which could drop him, by the way. The lesser extent of this is to Charlotte for 4. So you get Yusuf Nurkic in return, Josh Green, the 4th overall pick, and that's for CJ McCollum in 7. So you move up 3 spots. Does Charlotte do that? I'm not entirely sure, but they got off of those 2 not great contracts, and all they have to do is drop back 3 spots in the draft, and they add some more shooting. They add a guard alongside LaMelo Ball. They don't have a really good 2-guard whatsoever. That can be CJ, who brings some professionalism, all the things you're kind of looking for a Charlotte Hornets team that maybe is just tired of being irrelevant for everything. So that's where you maybe want to keep in mind with that deal, and that one also works. By the way, for the one with the San Antonio Spurs here, let me check the math on it. You're adding $3 million to their books, but you're getting, that's the wrong trade. That's another one we're looking at. You're adding $1 million to the books here. So it basically nets out to being fine. You have $10 million to the luxury to the luxury tax line. That's not counting Dylan Harper's contract, but you're in a much better financial position, I think. Because Harrison Barnes expires for $19 million, then you can still keep Keldon Johnson. I don't really care about him as a player. $17.5 million, that's a tradable contract in the future too. So I think that's a really great deal that makes sense for both teams when it comes down to it. But let's keep looking out west. A trade that would never have happened a year ago is very much in the realm of possibility right now. Let's look at Lauri Markkanen plus another player from the Utah Jazz coming to New Orleans. I'll tell you what the trade is. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Wayfair. The days are getting longer, the weather's warming up, and people are spending more time outside, which means it's a perfect time to refresh your outdoor space. Whether you're working with a big backyard or a small balcony, Wayfair has everything you need to make it feel more like you. And Wayfair's massive selection of outdoor essentials makes it easy to transform any space into your ideal summer setup. From comfy conversation sets to sleek dining tables and outdoor decor, they've got it all, and at prices that fit your budget. So grab a new patio dining set, some string lights from Wayfair, and help extend your outdoor place. What I love is delivery is free and hassle-free, even for the big stuff. Do you have a big truck to go to the big box store, carry that stuff back home? Probably not. Or you're going to pay couple $100 for shipping, delivery, all that, just go to Wayfair. It's free. They deliver it right to your door. So shop a huge selection of outdoor furniture online this summer. Get outside with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. And now for your second listen today. Don't forget about Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night until an NBA champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm on there every Friday breaking down the games. It's a lot of fun. Make sure you at least listen to that. Make it your second listen for sure on Fridays. So grade the trades that I'm throwing out here for y'all in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let me know of your favorite 1, 2, 3 in the comments down below. Give them all grades if you want. Do you think they're realistic? Am I completely out of sorts here? There's potential for that as well. So let's look at the next one here. This is a trade between the Pelicans and the Utah Jazz. And I had a smaller version of this trade, but then I kind of expanded it to one that I think makes much more sense. So I want to start with the Utah Jazz here. If there's one team that had a worse lottery, it's the Utah Jazz than the New Orleans Pelicans. They were slotted for 1. They fell to 5. 4 teams behind them jumped up. It's awful for them. I mean, I'm not crying for them, but it's pretty rough. You know, Utah missed out, and now their whole timeline is off. They have no need for, I was going to say Kelly Olynyk, Lauri Markkanen whatsoever anymore, right? Like, he doesn't fit the timeline. They still don't have that kind of blue chip prospect that they want to build around, that they need to build around. So what good is a 28-year-old Lauri Markkanen for them when you just have a bunch of young guys and you don't know which ones are good and which ones aren't, right? They have a lot of young guys that could be good, could be not, right? They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys that are first or second year players on the team right now. You have Walker Kessler too, that's a third year player. Bryce Sensabaugh, Keontae George, Taylor Hendricks, Kyle Filipowski, Isaiah Collier, Cody Williams. Any of those guys good? I like Filipowski, but Collier didn't kind of show what you wanted to see as a rookie. So their timeline is off and they're looking for that kind of cornerstone piece. Maybe they have it, maybe they don't. What this trade is going to do is going to give them 2 choices in this draft to try and do so. When you look at Lauri Markkanen and his contract right now, it is not team friendly. A year ago, he was an all-star player making $27 million a year, and that looks great. Then he signed an extension. This year, it's $42 million. Next year, it's $46, $46, $50 million, $53.5 million in the final year of that deal. That is a bad contract all of a sudden. That is a bad contract all of a sudden. So they're not going to get the return for Lauri Markkanen that they were once looking for here. It's not a team-friendly deal anymore. In fact, you might need to incentivize teams to take it on. So here's the trade. The trade started as Lauri Markkanen for CJ McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and 7. And frankly, I even think that's a little bit of an overpay for the Pelicans at this point with that contract for Lauri Markkanen. That's not great. So let's adjust this a little bit and try and make it work a little bit more. The trade is now Lauri Markkanen, Collin Sexton for CJ McCollum, DeJounte Murray, the 7th overall pick, and maybe a lottery-protected first-round pick in the future in some capacity. Maybe. Right? You could include the Indiana Pacers pick there. I'm not including the Pelicans or Bucks pick in that trade next year whatsoever. I think this trade makes a ton of sense. Lauri Markkanen, I don't want to call him a negative, but it's not a positive. DeJounte Murray with the injury, not great. The Pelicans want to compete next season and be a winner, a playoff team. Murray missing the first 2-3 months of the season is going to hurt them. So by getting Collin Sexton, who I'm a big fan of, that kind of fixes your point guard problem. Keep an eye on Collin Sexton all summer long, by the way. Regardless of if it's specifically this trade or something else, keep an eye on him. Collin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen become immediate starters for you, right? You get out, CJ McCollum gives them a big expiring contract. They got to deal with DeJounte Murray's, but by the time that they're really starting to be competitive or anything like that, they'll be able to trade him, or he's going to be towards the end of that deal, which is relatively good, truthfully. So this is a move that makes an absolute ton of sense. You know, you could include Jordan Hawkins in this. I wouldn't be upset about that sort of thing. Gets the Pelicans the point guard they need, a shooting big man to put next to Zion Williamson. And now you have a lot more size than you once did with Lauri's size, even if he's not an elite rebounder. And he's more of a 3 than he is a 4 or a 5. So your starting lineup is something like, we're kind of spitballing here. You would have Collin, Sexton, Herb Jones, Lauri Markkanen, Trey Murphy, Zion at the 5, something along those lines. Maybe you have Herb on the bench. You go real big, right? Sexton, Trey, Markkanen, Zion, Misi, or another center. I think those are opportunities here. You know, you still need to kind of figure out your rebounding. That's going to be a big problem. Defense is not going to be great. But look, you're going to win games with offense, and I'm very cool with that idea in the first place. You know, I said in the beginning of today's show, these trades are about making the team fun, relevant, exciting in a way that they just don't feel right now. And this trade, I think, definitely accomplishes it. This is a trade that wasn't realistic a year ago. And now I even think in some capacity, this is a overpay for the Pelicans, given that Lauri Markkanen contract. Like, that looks pretty awful all of a sudden and really opens the door for them to make a move. They had an awful lottery, and that really does change how we are going to view that team. So going forward here, I think Utah is open for business with a variety of players. You could sub out Collin Sexton for something else. You could scale this back where it's CJ and Olynyk for Markkanen, and you can figure out the picks and all of that. But this becomes a deal that wasn't realistic before here. And so I think you can get a deal done. I think Utah would jump on something like this. Now they have all of those young guys. They have the 5th pick and the 7th pick, which they can package to maybe try and move up, or just draft 2 guys there in what's a pretty good draft. And all of a sudden, you're looking very different where, okay, they're kind of throwing enough mud at the wall and trying to see what is sticking. That is what the Utah Jazz would be trying to do at this point in time and figure out, okay, we drafted someone at 7. That's our guy going forward. We drafted someone at 5. That's our guy going forward. And then you can start to kind of figure out the plan and where you go from there. Right now, the Utah Jazz don't have a direction at all. So by doing this, they save a little bit of money, sheds $3 million off of their books. The Pelicans have $8.4 million as of now to the luxury tax line. They're in a good spot here. The Jazz save some money. They get an additional pick. They get rid of a player that doesn't fit and his massive contract. It's only going to look worse in the future. It's a risk for the Pelicans. Their books are still a mess then, right? You're going to be kind of trying to deduct the luxury tax every year if that's what they want to do. And doing that dance, you don't have a first-round pick in this to add some youth to the team. And the rebounding and all that doesn't improve. Defense doesn't improve. I don't know if Lauri Markkanen strikes me as like a Joe Dumars kind of guy, but the talent is undeniably there. The shooting is an important thing. As we said, makes you fun, relevant, exciting, any of those words. Let me know what you think about this trade in the comments down below. I got one other one coming up that is an entirely different direction for New Orleans. This is going to be the most controversial. I'll leave it at that. We're going baby Pelicans after a Blazers trade. Coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Car Gurus. Shopping for a car should be exciting, not exhausting. But between confusing prices, hidden fees, it can feel overwhelming. So that's why I love using Car Gurus. They help you cut through the noise and show you the best deals with full confidence. And with over 4 million listings, Car Gurus has more new and used cars than any other major online marketplace in the US. They verify dealers, provide real price analysis, and give you the tools and data you need to make the right choice without second guessing yourself. So you need a deal you can trust? Car Gurus makes it easy to compare vehicles side by side with unbiased deal ratings. And one of my favorite features of this, price drop alerts, so you know exactly when the perfect car is available for your budget. It's no wonder similar web estimated traffic data shows Car Gurus is the #1 most visited car shopping site. So buy or sell your next car today with Car Gurus at cargurus.com. Go to cargurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. That's cargurus.com, cargurus.com. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. What happened to the Saints this past weekend with Derek Carr suddenly retiring? Is there more going on there? Feels like there's more going on there. Ross Jackson, host of the Locked On Saints podcast, making sense of everything black and gold, his retirement, what it means for the QB room in the future, and their own salary cap situation. Did it fix things for the Saints? Feels like it might have fixed things for the Saints. Make Locked On Saints part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your second listen today. Third trade I've got. These are, again, big trades that make the Pelicans relevant, exciting, interesting, fun, positive words here. Right? Not like feeling like they're stuck. We're going to do that whole show of, are the Pelicans stuck? That's a great question that was posed that I'm stealing and we're turning into a whole show. Here's the trade with the Portland Trail Blazers, and the everydayers have actually heard this before. I talked about it recently on the Locked On Blazers podcast. We're going baby Pels. The Portland Trail Blazers receive Zion Williamson, CJ McCollum, Jose Alvarado. The Pelicans get DeAndre Ayton, Jeremy Grant, Scoot Henderson, and the 11th overall pick in this draft, and 3 future second-round picks. You can maybe try and convince the Portland Trail Blazers to trade a first instead of those 3 seconds, but they're kind of limited on future firsts that they can trade due to a couple of other deals in trades. But you can figure all of that out. And this trade would have to be done on or after draft night, but you can agree to it beforehand. Couple of things here. You might hear me trading away Zion Williamson after he just represented the Pelicans on the lottery and be like, what the heck? Hear me out here, right? For Portland, they do this deal because Zion is the best all-star level player that they're going to be able to get. They're not in the running for Giannis. They're not in the running for Kevin Durant. They're not going to be in running for any of those guys. You need to kind of do a buy low, boom or bust type of move for them. Zion Williamson's it. This is a pretty cheap deal for them, given that it's basically just 1 first-round pick, the 11th overall pick in this draft. They get off of 2 not great contracts. Jeremy Grant has 3 years and about $100 million left. He's making $32 million this coming season. It's not great. It's not a bad player. It's not a good player. DeAndre Ayton, $35.5 million, but he's an expiring. So that money falls off the books after this year, and that is a big expiring contract. Scoot Henderson is a guy that David Griffin liked. Don't know if Joe Dumars feels the same way, but it's a buy low on a guy that was a top 3 pick recently that does look to be, what you hope kind of Dylan Harper could be too. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. So this move for the Pelicans gives you 2 timelines, which I don't love, right? 2 timelines. We talked about this on the show recently. 2 timelines doesn't always work. But hear me out on this. Your starting lineup would be something like Scoot Henderson. At this point, it would be, whoever you take in the first round at your 2 guard, or Herb Jones. So here, Scoot Henderson, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, DeAndre Ayton, Jeremy Grant. What? That sounds like an 8th seed. It's not an exciting playoff team. They might need to get there through the play-in tournament team, but that's a decent enough team. And then you add in the 7th overall pick and the 11th overall pick here. This is a good draft. This can get you someone like Derek Queen and a Jeremiah Fears. So you get a point guard for the future along with Scoot. They're both kind of more like not pure points. Or you could get a Con Knipple and a Derek Queen. So you get a small forward, a wing that can shoot. You get a big man that can stretch the court and kind of is the prototypical big man of the future in the NBA, All of those things, you can go in any different directions. You could draft whoever you like, but you get 2 chances to do it. You get a baby Pelicans here. This goes similar to the Utah Jazz, right? Throw enough mud at the wall, hope one of them pans out. Between Scoot Henderson, the 7th pick, and the 11th pick, you hope one of those guys becomes kind of your cornerstone player that you can build around for the future. Jeremy Grant, you might be able to trade him later. If not, I'll go and probably win you some games while you be competitive enough. That doesn't sound like a terrible, terrible team to me. That sounds like a team that will be competitive in the West while also having young guys that you can develop. As I said, baby Pelicans here. You know, you could put Jeremy Grant on the bench. You could put DeAndre Ayton on the bench and just start your young guys. You could run out Scoot Henderson, the 7th pick, the 11th pick, Trey Murphy, Yves Missi. Or in some capacity, a combination of that, right? And all of a sudden your team looks very different. Now, all of a sudden, you're competitive this season, but you still have a fairly bright future if these picks and players pan out. And if they do, you know, we talked kind of about, again, the beginning of this was, how do you make the Pelicans exciting, relevant, fun, interesting? A team with a bunch of young guys that you just drafted is interesting. They're probably going to be fun because it's going to be chaotic even if they're losing, right? Relevant because, well, the future's there, and they're exciting because you want to see them develop. It kind of accomplishes all of those things, in my opinion. If this is, the, you know, of all the deals we talked about, this one's the one that probably makes you the least competitive next season. But all 3 of these trades I do think are realistic, and they all accomplish various things. The first trade with the Spurs gets you Dylan Harper, the guy that you want to pair alongside Zion Williamson. The second trade with the Utah Jazz, Lauri Markkanen, Collin, Sexton. This is a trade that you're paying for it, and your cap's kind of borked, but you will be as competitive as possible next season because you kind of get out from DeJounte Murray. And it doesn't mean that DeJounte Murray is not going to be like on the team or part of the Pelicans' future. Just, I don't know, if you can trade him and get someone that to replace him, do it kind of thing. Or go with the youth movement, the baby Pelicans, and acquire first-round picks if you can. Let me know what you think. Which trade is your favorite? Do you like any of these? I have lesser trades. We'll talk about those. I'm not talking about little tweaks here and there. I wanted to talk kind of big trades that, as I said in the beginning, give you some juice to the franchise in a way that it probably feels like they need. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'll be back with y'all tomorrow. We'll probably answer the question, are the Pelicans stuck? Not as bad as you think, I'll tell you in tomorrow's episode. See y'all next time.